This is Jack. Can I help you? Good morning, Andrew. What's going on? All right, excellent. All right, let's get your broker's license. You need a 70%, right? And the wording is definitely half the battle, that's for sure. Did you use the 700 sample questions we give you? Oh boy, Andrew, that came with your package, yeah. So when you sign up with broker class, you automatically got Gately Academy, which included 700 sample questions and an additional 100-page online guide. How long did it take you to get your approval? Almost 3 weeks. Oh my gosh, that's forever. Right, once you get green lit, it's pretty much available, that's right. Hey, but I tell you, I don't know what test questions you've been looking at, but if you've been getting in the high 80s, that's a good sign. If you were taking the 700 sample questions that I just sent you, if you were taking those and you're getting in the high 80s, I think that's a good sign. I don't know about the questions that you've been taking online, but well, I think that PSI exam has a couple of flaws in it. There's another question in that PSI exam where they ask you to look at the amortization table, but they don't provide it. So it's like you can't answer that question because they don't provide the amortization table on the sample exam. In real life they do, but on that sample exam that PSI sells you for $20, they say consult the amortization table to answer the question, but they don't give it to you. So that PSI exam is not perfect. Sure, so great question. And I've done this before because I've rented a lot of apartments or commercial properties. And when you do a rental, you could do it either way. You could have the rent sent directly to the landlord, or you could collect, for instance, the deposit, usually 1 month, put it in the escrow account, and have it sit there until the landlord approves the application. So that's very common. No, you don't keep it in the escrow account for 3 years. You only keep it while pending the transaction. So if someone says, "Hey, I want to rent the apartment," okay, how much is it? It's $1,000 a month. Well, I'd like to apply for it today and put down a deposit. Sure. Here's the application. Write out your check to Jack Gately Real Estate. We're going to put this in the escrow account. This will be your deposit. If you get approved, we'll forward that to the landlord. If you get declined, we'll send it back to you because it's client money. You mean on an ongoing basis, collecting rent on an ongoing basis? That's property management. That's a different thing altogether. That's property management. You're not brokering a deal between two parties. That's property management. There are no audit requirements, sadly, and usually, unfortunately, the only time everything hits the fan, so to speak, is when a consumer complains. Hey, where's my deposit? Why aren't I getting my deposit back? Then the state will step in, and at any time, the state can stroll into your brokerage and ask you to see your escrow records. So I still get my escrow records in paper. So I'm old-fashioned like that. I like my paper records for the escrow account. And literally, you could open your agency and 2 days later they could be there. Hey, we need your escrow account, and you got to give it to them. So there's that threat of instant audit from the state, but there's no annual requirement. Literally, my wife can't even get the escrow account. She doesn't even know how to log in. And nobody does. If I get hit by a bus, you can't access it. And so I'm literally the only one that knows the password. I'm the only signatory on the account. The state issued some guidelines not that long ago that says you can't have staff do that, which is good. And it is kind of self-policing because eventually, obviously, if somebody wants their money and you can't give it back or it's late, they're going to complain. And on the flip side of that, the state does occasional, a random audit. Like last year, and I know these other people that have had this, the state will just show up and they'll ask you for a whole list of stuff that you need. One of those would be the current balance of the escrow account, your errors and omissions policy. So they do some proactive enforcement as well. But most of it's due to consumer complaint. And remember, you got to settle this when you sell something. You got to settle it out, and there's the lawyers involved with the Alta statement, and that's also like a self-reckoning as well, right? So if you're selling a house, it's like you're selling a house that's going to be 4 to 8 weeks, maybe for a commercial transaction longer. But hey, you're going to come up with that money. Now, having said that, I mean, there have been any number of brokers that have gotten in big trouble running like a pyramid scheme. There was a guy up in Quincy a couple of years back that was doing that. So there's definitely people that are doing the wrong thing. Well, just to be clear, the word trust account and escrow account are effectively the same. We don't use that term trust account in Massachusetts very often, but trust account and escrow account are the same. And in other states, they use the word trust account a lot more often. When's your exam date? Tomorrow? What time? All right, well, get going. You better send me a selfie tomorrow. But I don't want to hear from you until noon, because if you have an 8 o'clock appointment, you better use all 4 hours. Just read the question slowly. Read the question slowly. And most people have the opportunity to go through the exam twice. So you get to the end of the first segment and you still have time on the clock. A lot of people, they just go on to the next segment. Don't do that. If you still have time on the clock, which I think is like 2.5 hours, then go over all the questions you had trouble with. And once you have exhausted that 2.5 hours, then you go on to the next section, which is the Massachusetts. My pleasure. Good luck. Get a good night's sleep. All right. Bye-bye. Okay. So his exam's tomorrow at 8 a.m. Study hard, Andrew.